All right. Hey, everyone. We are going to start off our very first lesson in economics. And this is in Unit 1. We're going to cover all of these little bubbles here. So we have an intro to economics today. We'll have a lesson on demand and supply and equilibrium, which is just supply and demand together. And we'll talk about the different kinds of businesses and competition and how to make your business really work and be productive and make the best of what you have. Okay. So today we're going to focus on just a basic introduction of economics. Mainly, we're going to focus on the types of economies and factors of production. But before we get there, there's a few things that we need to cover, just basic terminology. So first, what is economics? All right, economics is going to be the study of choices when there's scarcity. And scarcity just means that we have more wants than we have resources. So you know that song, you can't always get what you want, right? But try sometimes, you might get what you need. Okay. So economics is just that, okay? A lot of people think, oh, economics is about money. Well, money is not always involved. Economics is more the study of choices that we make when there's scarcity, right? So we can't always get what we want, so we have to make choices. All right, there are two kinds of economics. We're going to focus on both in different units, but the two things I want you to we need to break apart are microeconomics and macroeconomics. Micro, like a microscope, allows you to see things that are really, really, really tiny. Microeconomics is the study of tiny economics, or economics on an individual level. Okay, the choices made by individuals, like me and you, or individual businesses, like a mom and pop store or a restaurant, just one. Okay, so that is microeconomics. Macroeconomics, macro, big, large scale. Macro is a study of choices made by like entire industries, like the restaurant or the food industry, or entire nations. So we're going to have a unit on microeconomics, this one, and then we'll have a unit on macroeconomics as well. But I need you to know what those are before we go any further. Now, the key to economics we've already mentioned, but I want you to always remember this, like even put a key by it in your notes. The key to economics is scarcity. If there was not scarcity, if there was an abundance of all the things, there wasn't limited time or limited money or limited resources or limited skills, then we would not need to study economics. We wouldn't have to make choices because we have an abundance of things. So the fact that there is scarcity, there are limited not limited wants, good gracious. There are limited resources and unlimited wants, right? So that concept is called scarcity. So we could just say economics is a study of choices when there's scarcity, okay? All right. Now, when we talk about making choices, basically we're talking about trade-offs. And with trade-offs come opportunity costs. So a trade-off is just choosing one thing over another. Like I choose to eat an apple instead of a slice of cake. Or I choose to get up out of bed and get to work on economics. Or I choose to sleep in and press snooze just a little while longer so I don't have to start on my score yet. Or maybe you choose one of these colleges, okay? Those would be trade-offs. You're choosing one over the other. An opportunity cost is the value of what you gave up. What is the cost of the decision you made? So let's run with this example. So let's say that we chose to go to Carolina, obviously the better school out of all these choices. I'm a Carolina alum. I'm only kind of kidding. So if we choose to go to Carolina over, let's say, UCLA, well, UCLA is all the way in California. Okay, so let's say we chose the trade-off of we chose Carolina over UCLA. Now, our opportunity cost is the value of what we gave up. Well, maybe we really wanted to go to the West Coast. Perhaps we had family on the West Coast that we wanted to be near. Or maybe we didn't have any family there and we want to go all the way over there so we'd be away from our family, right? So these are, things you'd have to consider. Now, if we choose to go to UNC, instead of UCLA, that's our trade-off. Our opportunity cost is the value of UCLA. What are we not getting by not going to UCLA? Well, if you had family there, maybe you're missing out on the opportunity to live closer to family in California. Or you could say you are choosing to go to ECU over Pitt Community College. Okay, lots of people make this choice. Both are local to our area, and so you have to choose. Do you want to go to ECU or do you want to go to Pitt Community College? Now, there's value in both, but what would be the opportunity cost? What's the value of Pitt Community College? If you did not go there, this is what you give up, okay? So the value of Pitt Community College is that it's less expensive, so you're gonna have to pay more, or maybe there's a trade that you're hoping to learn that maybe ECU doesn't offer. So if we choose, our trade-off is to go to ECU instead of Pitt. Our opportunity cost is that Pitt Community College is less expensive for a 2-year degree. It only takes 2 years to get a degree as opposed to 4. Or perhaps you're missing out on a trade that you could have learned, but now you're going to go to a university where you could learn a trade still, but maybe it won't be as hands-on as Pitt Community College. So you have to look at what are the pros and cons of each, and what are you giving up when you make that decision. There's always a trade-off. There's always an opportunity cost to the decision you make. So keep that in mind as we go through economics. And you'll have to do things like a cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost of this? What is the benefit of this? Which one do I, or how does this play into my choice? A cost-benefit analysis. You'll hear me talk about that a lot through this course. All right, moving on to the meat of this lesson. Let's talk about types of economies, because that really will help us kind of put the framework in this course for what we'll be talking about. So there are what economists call 4 economic questions, all right? What should be produced? How should it be produced? How much should be produced? And for whom should it be produced? Now, depending on who answers these questions is how we identify what type of economy a nation is. Okay, so who answers the questions? There are 4 different types of economies that we usually talk about: a traditional economy, a command economy, a market economy, and a mixed economy. So who answers the questions? If the answer to that is tradition, if tradition answers these 4 economic questions, then we'll have a traditional economy, okay? In a traditional economy, decisions are based on tradition, the way it's always been done. We see this a lot in Africa. We see this like with the Amish, for example. We see this in several parts of South America, and there are pros and there are cons to this, right? You know, the pro is you know what you're going to be when you grow up. You're going to be whatever your family does for a living. If your family farms, you're going to farm, okay? And there's also benefit in that you have what is needed for you and your family because you are providing it. Okay, there isn't a surplus of things. You don't have a whole lot of choices. You have what you need, and that's it. Now, obviously, the cons would be there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for if you want to break outside the mold of tradition. There isn't surplus, so if there's a natural disaster that wipes out your crops for the year, then you're in trouble. And it's hard to have trade, right? If you don't have surplus, you're not trading with other people. And so a lot of times things are very stagnant. You know, you're not getting new and improved and innovative products and services because you're just providing for the day to day. So that's a traditional economy. Okay, now back to our economic questions. If the government is answering these 4 economic questions, if the government decides what should be produced, how much should be produced, how it should be produced, and who it's produced for, if the government's deciding that, that's called a command economy. In a command economy, like I said, the government makes all of the decisions. We see this in places like Cuba and North Korea. Like here's an example in this picture right here. These are the example haircuts that women in North Korea may have. So if you are a female in North Korea, also males have a limited number of haircuts that are approved by the government. The government has said, if you would like a haircut, these are the services that government employees, because everybody's a government employee, the government owns all of the production, all the services, the government owns all the property. The government says, here are the services we provide for you. So if you want a haircut, these are your choices, okay? Also, in a command economy, there are not many different brands. Think about our cereal aisle in the United States. You walk down the aisle and you've got a whole bunch of cereal choices, right? Well, in a command economy, you're going to have one brand of cereal. And here's an example. This is a blender, a guy holding a blender in Cuba. And you can see the whole aisle is full of the same style blender. The government is making the choice of what to produce. Okay, so there are advantages and disadvantages to this. The advantage is that there are really low prices and you have financial support for education and other basic needs. Like your housing is provided to you. You do not have to buy your own housing. Medical assistance, medical health care is provided by the government. Everyone is on equal footing. Okay, these are advantages to a command economy. Everyone gets the same thing. The disadvantage is there's no competition because the government owns all the stores. So it's not competing against anyone. Because there's no competition, there's little choice of goods. If you don't like that style blender, that's your only option. There's also a small supply of many goods because why would the government need to produce mass numbers of goods? It's not like somebody else is going to come out produce them and steal their products. If you want a car, you're going to be on a waiting list until the government issued car is ready. There's no one else providing cars for you. Okay. Also, when there is lack of competition, generally speaking, the quality of goods is going to be poor, meaning you're not going to have top-notch quality because your competitor isn't going to produce a better version of the car. You do not have a competitor to compete with. So therefore, you get away with shoddy workmanship oftentimes. There's little individual freedom of choice. This picture of the haircut example is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You don't have a lot of choices in what kind of hairstyle you have, or what kind of blender you buy, or what food you get. So in a command economy, there's little individual freedom. You don't get to choose what you are when you grow up. The government chooses for you. They say, you're good at this. You will go to university and get this degree, and then you will become this whatever career, okay? So that you will give back to the government and your economy. So there's little choices here. I'm going to zoom in here so you can jot these down in case you did not already. All right, so far we've talked about traditional economies and we talked about command economies. Now, if the people, our green blob over here, answer the questions: what should be produced, how should it be produced, how much, and for whom it should be produced. If the people are answering that question, then we have what's called a market economy. The people make the decisions. We see this in the United States, as I gave the example earlier, a cereal aisle. In the United States, we have many different companies that are owned by people and they compete against each other, and therefore we have an abundance of choices. You walk down the cereal aisle and you can choose, sugar-free, gluten-free, regular, Fruity Pebbles, Fruit Loops, Captain Crunch, Special K. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Same thing for chips, the toilet paper. I mean, it's toilet paper. You've got 1-ply, 2-ply, extra strong, extra soft. And then you've got all the different kinds of brands. And then you've got knockoff brands at the store, or the store brand version. There's so many just versions of toilet paper in a market economy. We also see this in Japan. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to this as well. Okay, for example, we have more choices. Obviously, we just talked about that. And when there is competition, generally speaking, we have better quality because businesses are competing for customers to purchase their goods. If you do not like the quality of Captain Crunch, then you just go elsewhere for a different kind of cereal. If you do not like the quality of Charmin Ultra, then you go and find Angel Soft instead. So those companies benefit when they have good quality. Also, there's an abundant supply because all the competitors are producing the same good. We also have the ability to have private property. You can buy your own car. You can buy your own home. You can have your own business. Okay. Individuals have tons of freedom. You can wear whatever hairstyle you want. Okay. The disadvantage here, though, is that there is unequal distribution of wealth, which is a fancy way of saying that there are poor people and there are rich people. And that is part of a market economy. Now, truth be told, most nations are a mixture of these different types of economies. And so when the people and the government together make the decisions, we have what's called a mixed economy. Okay, a mixed economy, people and the government make the decisions together. Take, for example, the United States. If you want to buy a Pepsi, okay, I love Pepsi. It's my favorite. It's my beverage of choice. If you want to buy a Pepsi, then on the side of it, you can see the ingredients and the nutritious value, right? Which there isn't a lot in a Pepsi. But the government has decided to inform the people. This is a rule that all products that are going to be consumed, like food and drinks, are going to have to list this information. That is a government getting involved, although the people who own Pepsi and started Pepsi and sell Pepsi, and the people who buy Pepsi are making the decision. Okay? If you've heard of OSHA, OSHA regulates the production of many things, like whatever in a factory, okay, and other careers as well. But there are certain regulations that go in to making products, and those regulations are monitored by the government. Okay, so the government is involved. What you wear while you're producing Pepsi, okay? What you'll see, the cleanliness, the sanitation of the factory, all of that's going to be regulated by the government. Also, the employees have to be paid minimum wage. The employers of Pepsi cannot just pay whatever they want to pay. Now, they can to some extent, but it has to be at least minimum wage, and the minimum wage is set by the government. So you can see here that people have decided to make and sell Pepsi, and people like you and I have the ability to decide to go and purchase Pepsi. And if we don't want to drink Pepsi, we could drink Coke. Okay, there's other brands and other competitors to Pepsi, but people aren't the only ones involved in this decision making, because the government steps in and says, well, on your cans, you have to list this, and your factories and your workers have to be dressed this way or meet these sanitation regulations. You have to pay your employees at least minimum wage. The FDA is going to approve any kind of food or drug that people will have to take. Okay, the government and the people are involved in making the decision. And so honestly, every economy has some level of a mixed economy, people and the government together making decisions. Okay, so these are our 4 types of economies: traditional, mixed, which most of them are mixed, market, and command. Okay, generally the US leans towards market economies, decisions made by the people, and places like China lean towards command, but ultimately, all economies have some level of a mix of the government and the people. So if you think of a spectrum, and you've got like market on one side, command on the other, the US is going to be closer to the market side, and like places like China is going to be closest to the command side, okay? All right, last thing I want to talk about in this lesson are the 4 factors of production. And this should be a review from like middle school and world history. But the factors of production, there are 4. We've got land. Land is anything that is literal land or comes from the land. Like it would exist without humans, trees, animals, crude oil, okay? Sometimes we call this natural factors, but most economists are going to call this something simple like land. Things that occur naturally in this world. That's one factor of production, okay? The second factor of production, things that you need to produce things, is labor. Excuse me. So you can see labor. That's just the people who are producing goods and services. This could be the cashier, the restaurant employee. This could be the business manager. It could be the banker. It could be the factory worker. It could be a teacher or a taxi driver. So the people who are involved, can't hardly see that B. Let me scoot over. There we go. The people who are involved are the labor factor, okay? Or also sometimes called the human factor, because humans are the ones providing labor. All right, the next one is capital. Capital is anything that is man-made, okay? If it would not exist without humans, then it is capital. So a spoon, a fork, a knife, a plate, a building, okay? That second picture is of a building, a cash register, the money, the actual money. We would not have money unless humans made it. So that would be capital, okay? Sometimes students get confused because, like, let's take the example of French fries, okay? French fries would not be land. They would be capital, okay? Because they're man-made. French fries don't just grow up out of the ground looking like French fries. Okay, I mean, like, get your ketchup, walk down the field and pick a French fry and eat it. That's not happening, right? So that would be capital. But potatoes would be land. because potatoes do just grow in the ground. I mean, we've definitely made broad stripes of having production of like hardcore production of potatoes in fields, but they could just grow naturally without any human involvement. Same thing if you think about milk. Cows would just produce milk, whether humans are here or not. So just raw milk would be land. But if we're talking about like milk in a grocery store, that has been processed, there are additives, so that would be capital. So just think through that. Would this exist without any human involvement at all? Then it's land. If it requires humans to be involved to make something of it, it would be capital. And the last one is entrepreneurship. I should have worn a different dress so you can see. Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are the people who took a risk and invested in starting a business or coming up with an idea. So these are people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, you could think about like go back in history if you've had American history and think about like the captains of industry, or some people would say the robber barons of the industrialization period, like Carnegie and Rockefeller and JP Morgan. Okay, those would all be called entrepreneurs. All right, so these are our 4 factors of production. We've got land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. You need all 4 in order for a business to be able to produce a good or a service. Okay, so keep this in mind when you hear factors of production. All right, so that's it today of what is economics, going over some basic terms, and also identifying the different types of economies and the factors of production.